everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I want to do my April wrap up. So I will talk to you about all of the books that I read in April. April was Magical Readathon month, so that is very much what my reading was about. And first of all, I'm going to go through some stats that have to do with my goal of reaching a 0 TBR this year. And then I will go into the individual book reviews where we'll talk about every single book that I have finished in April. So let's get started with the stats. So I started out the year with 37 books on my TBR, and my goal is to reach 0 with that sometime this year. And let's see how we did in April. So in April, I was hoping to get under 40 again, because at the beginning of the year, it was my birthday, I got quite a few books as gifts. So my TBR went up quite a bit. And in March, we did quite a bit of a reduction again. So we started out the month of April with 42 books on the TBR. And I was really hoping that I would get under 40 again. Now, the first number we need to look at this is the number of books that I have finished. And in April, I managed to finish 9 books, which is quite good. It's the same amount that I did in February and is a little bit higher than my average. Then we have the books that I bought or received as gifts. I have these in one category. And this is where things went quite a lot south in April, because I bought and received 15 books in April. And now you might start shouting at me a little bit, and I can totally understand why. This was not planned at all. However, Libro.fm did an audiobook sale, and I did get 9 books from that sale. I also received some books for Easter, and then I bought some other audiobooks that were not part of the sale. So in the end, we ended up with 15 new books, which, yeah, it's not great. It's not great, but I do not have an audiobook backlog, or I didn't have that until now. So I don't feel too bad about this, because I mainly want to focus on reading my physical TBR down to 0. However, yeah, now I have a couple of audiobooks that I still need to get through as well to reach that 0. However, 3 of these are a series I already planned to read in autumn for my series reading vlogs. So 3 of those will get read, like, definitely. And then the other 6 are all books that I had on my wish list for specific reasons or for a very long time that I'm like super excited to read very soon. So while I won't like immediately sit down and read only those audiobooks now, I still think I will get through these 9 new audiobooks very, very quickly too. And then last but not least, we have the number of books that I have borrowed. And in April, that was 1. I borrowed 1 book from my library. If we take this all together, 9 books read, 15 books bought or received, and 1 book borrowed, then I added 7 books to my TBR this month, which, am I proud of that? No. No, this was not where I thought I would be. I have another but for you. We stayed under 50, or we went back under 50. So we're now at 49 books on the TBR. It's not great. It's not great, you guys. But 9 of these are audiobooks, and I promise I will get to these very, very soon. So yeah, that's the stats. I think we just leave behind the stats now, because it just makes me sad. Why am I sabotaging myself like that? This could have been an amazing month for reducing my TBR. But now let's talk about those 9 books that I actually managed to finish in April. And the first book I finished in April, we're not actually going to talk about, because that was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. And because I finished this on the 1st of April, I actually included this in my March wrap-up, because, yeah, this was just a book I had carried over a little bit. I had like a couple of pages left to read. So this one, if you want to hear all of my thoughts on it, you can go and check out the March wrap-up. I gave this one 4 stars. I had a good time with it. This is a very fun YA fantasy where you follow a headstrong a female main character who has grown up in a library, but because she gets sucked into some nefarious stuff, she has to leave the library and find out who is kind of threatening all she loves. So now we're going to talk about my Magical Readathon books. I'm very excited about that. So the first book I finished for Magical Readathon was a book that had been on my TBR for quite a while. This is Eight Mountains by Paolo Cognetti. This is a translated Italian book. So yeah, it's set in Italy as well. It is a little bit like historical fiction-y because yeah, it is set in the 20th century. And we are following a boy and then man whose parents basically grew up in the mountains, but his childhood is spent mostly in Milan, I think. And then during the summer, the mother always takes him to this mountain area where he also makes a friend. And it's just kind of like about his like relationship with his parents, with the mountains, and with that friend. This was a fine read. I'm not mad I read it. I think the writing was actually quite nice, but just the themes in here are nothing like particularly interesting to me. So in the end, I gave this one 3.5 stars, and I would say this is very much a book where men just need therapy. Then the next book I finished was my first audiobook, and that is We Need New Names by NoViolet Bulawayo. This is a book by an author from Zimbabwe, and this book is kind of split into two parts. We have the first half of the book that is actually set in Zimbabwe, and then the second part is set in the US, and we follow a young girl growing up to be a young woman in this book, and she lives in poverty in Zimbabwe. And this book touches on a lot of the history of the country and how yeah, people were treated by the government, by the ruling people there, and how like living in poverty and not being protected and all of that has influenced her life. I thought this was very interesting. Definitely, it inspired me to read a little bit more about the history of Zimbabwe, which I actually did not know a whole lot about, and it is quite heartbreaking and sad to read about all of that. This also has like a ton of content warnings, from like abuse to animal cruelty and animal death and so much more. This has some fat shaming, some racism towards Asian people, and yeah, it's a lot. It's a whole lot. Now, what I didn't love about this book is that it is written from a child's point of view, so we don't really get a lot of reflections on the things that are going on. Now, when you read it as an adult, you can understand things a lot more deeply or differently than the children do. So I don't really love a child's perspective in a book, so I didn't love that, but I still think this was an important read and definitely one that, again, I don't regret that I've read this, and so I gave it 3.5 stars as well. Then next up, I finished a German book. I finished I Love You, Fräulein Lena by Hanna Aden. This is a historical fiction book set at the end and after the Second World War in Germany, and we follow a woman called Lena who is a refugee from the eastern parts of Germany, and she ends up at the northern kind of coast of Germany and has to settle in there as a refugee. They're not really welcome from like the people who already live there, and this also deals with the British forces that kind of took over those parts of Germany after the war. Now, this book is very difficult to talk about, and I also don't want to go into too much depth because probably not a lot of people are interested in this one. However, yeah, this story we follow is like mostly like a love story, I would say, and it does like open up quite a lot of the like typical World War II Germany topics. However, I felt like it dealt with all of that in a very not great way, and actually what happens at the end of the book made me quite angry and made me feel like very uncomfortable, and yeah, this just wasn't for me. I gave it 2 stars and I wouldn't recommend it. I think the way it deals with the Shoah, with the Holocaust, is just not great. And the way it compares like the problems that these refugee girls had with like things that happen in the concentration camps and all of that. It was not warranted at all. So yeah, I did not love this. However, I did still go ahead and pick up the sequel immediately. Lass uns tanzen, Fräulein, Lena. This is the second book following the same main character and the same kind of romantic relationship. This one I liked a little bit more, and this is actually the book that my best friend gave me for Christmas because she didn't know it was a sequel. So I definitely see why she picked this one up, and this could have been something I'm very interested in. As the title would suggest, this is more about music. This is about, I think, like swing or jazz or something, and how this had already existed before the Nazis in Germany and how it is coming back now after the war. And our main character is starting to explore that a little bit. And it is still dealing with kind of the same central conflict than the first book. And I feel like it was definitely necessary because the resolution in the first book was just so terrible for it. So that is picked up in here again, and it's trying to do a better job with that, which I can appreciate. And so in the end, I gave this book 3 stars. Next up, I picked up a sequel of the series I Very Much Enjoy. This is the, I think, 6th book in the Temperance Brennan series by Katie Reichs. It's called Bare Bones, and this is what inspired the TV show Bones. So this is very, very different from the TV show. Only the like main character's name and basic job is similar, and I really love these books. I think the first one is a little bit too generic, but then starting with the second one, she definitely found her footing and her niche within this like crime genre. So I had a great time reading this book. In this one, we follow a case where at the beginning of the book, Temperance Brennan has to kind of look at the skeleton of a baby that is found that was basically burned. And they don't know if the baby was like murdered or whether it was maybe born dead or something like that. It's not easy to tell. And starting with that, more and more bodies start to pile up, and it seems that there are connections. I didn't love this one as much as the previous books. I feel like this case felt a little bit more random in all of its parts. However, there's also a very slow burn romance that is going throughout all of these books, and I felt like in this one we actually got a little bit of something that I have been waiting for a while. So there was some good, there was some bad, but overall I think these books are just a very good time, even though they usually have like quite brutal like murders or other things going on. I still feel like they're quite cozy to me because we're really looking at the kind of academic side of things, and Temperance Brennan as the main character doesn't only investigate murders, but she also works at the university, which is obviously something I did as well for many years now. So yeah, I think because of that, it just is a little bit of a kinship there as well. And so in the end, I gave this one 4 stars. Then next, I finished one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and that is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is the new Hunger Games novel. You've probably heard all about this. I did a complete reading vlog for this book, so you can go and check it out for all my thoughts. I had a fun time reading this. I was definitely intrigued to hear Haymitch's story. So in this one, we follow the 50th Hunger Games, so the second quarter quell, and in that one, we have double the amount of tributes, and Haymitch is one of them, and as we know from the original Hunger Games trilogy, he is also the winner, the victor of these games. And yeah, we follow him on his journey, how that came to be. And what I think is especially interesting in this one is just the way that when you watch the games or you read about like Haymitch and all of that, his like games, they provide a certain picture of him, and I think this book kind of shows how a lot of that is just a persona and also editing from the capital, and that it doesn't really reflect the like person Haymitch was before and during the games. And this also is quite tragic, which you could guess if you've read the original trilogy. However, I thought it would be much worse, and I think because of that, it didn't really hit me in the feels the way I expected it would, and I gave it 4 stars in the end. I had a good time with it. I definitely liked this one better than Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Then I finished my last April read, so to speak. I snuck this in at the end to make things a little bit easier for me. So I swapped this out. This is a little manga called Cheese Sweet Home. This is volume 9, so I'm already quite a bit along in the series. We're following a small cat called Chi, shown here on the cover. She, at the beginning of this series, is lost. She loses her family, her mother and her siblings, and then she's found by a human family who take her in. And we have in this family a mother, a father, and a small boy. He's still a toddler. So Chi and the toddler are kind of like siblings in a way, and yeah, it's just really sweet. It's really cute. These are just like happy times and fun and adorable, and yeah, I would say they are more like middle grade, like children's manga, and it's just a hug in a book basically. So definitely recommend if you need some cute cat time. And I gave this volume 3.5 stars. It's not like life-changing, but these are just very, very cute and sweet. And then the last book I finished was my second audiobook, and that was The Sky on Fire by Jenn Lyons. Now, this book is a bit of a difficult thing for me because last year I read the Chorus of Dragons series and I absolutely loved it. Like, Jenn Lyons really shows what she can do with characters and with her world in that series. So reading a standalone by her was intriguing. However, I was already a little bit fearful because I hadn't heard like amazing reviews, and I just felt like her writing style might not translate into a standalone novel, and in the end that's exactly what happened for me. I think that she just didn't have enough time to really get everything out of this amazing world she creates, and then also these characters. It's just everything is a little bit too surface level with this one. We do have kind of an engaging plot because in this world basically you have like mountain cities and then the deep, which is in the valley, and the mountain people, they have very strong relationships with dragons. However, they are seen as the servants of dragons and not as their equals, so is all a little bit like difficult. And in the deep, the people who live there, they are like not like as highly developed because they don't have the same like magical abilities as the like dragon people. However, they live a freer life because of that, because they're free of the dragons. And we follow our main character of Anarod, who was sentenced to death as a teenager basically. And she, however, survived and now lives in the deep. But because of things that are going on, she is kind of sucked back into the political intrigues of these like Dragon Mountain people, and things just go like all kinds of wrong. Yeah. This is also very queer. It's very queer normative, so that was fun. They do have these like garden rings that you wear to show other people what your interests are, and I love that idea. I still think we should all do that because like it's so hard to find out like if people are single, what their interests are and stuff like that if you just meet them randomly. And so I think these rings are a fantastic idea. So there was a lot of good, but ultimately it did not like get me in the way that the Chorus of Dragons series did, and I gave it 3.5 stars in the end. So those are all the books that I finished in April, all of my books I needed for my calling of Necromancer for the Magical Readathon. I would love to hear how you did if you participated in the readathon, and also what was your favorite book of April. I would love to hear about that in the comments. Also, you can go ahead and shout at me because I ruined my TBR like that, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!